Welcome to the Curiosity Crisis. We challenge ourselves to explore the world of business, tech, investing, and science. Get curious and be part of our journey as we discuss, challenge, and learn. Today, we're talking to Dylan Pathirana, a renewable energy engineer who left the industry to pursue entrepreneurship. He went to the Ignite program at Stanford Graduate School of Business and has founded a sustainable equipment lending company called Lendecon. He's a friend of the show and someone we've been really looking forward to having on. So Dylan, welcome.
Thank you, guys. It's honestly such a privilege. Long-time listener, so keen to be here.
Mate, I think you have been one of the biggest fans of the show so far, so we very much appreciate it, but very keen to delve into your story.
Can't wait.
So the first question, as always, is what's been keeping you curious?
Mate, I've just finished a book called Die With Zero, and basically its whole philosophy is do things that you want to do right now rather than waiting for the future to do them. You know, a lot of us are saving for retirement, but by the time we get there, we'll probably be too old to do a lot of the things that we want to do. So really living in the present and trying to do things now. And I really like that philosophy.
Love that.
There's one podcast I listened to of I think Max Levchin. I think you sent it to me actually, Luke, back in the day. And he said the best bit of advice he ever got is, you know that thing you really want to do? Stop everything else and go do that right now.
100%.
And because you'll find the roadblocks and the bumps and the loopholes you have to get through there anyway. But that's a really, really cool perspective.
Yeah, so you went and did Stanford Ignite. For listeners who have never heard of that, they might know what Stanford is. It's a prestigious university in United States, but they don't know anything else. What is it and why did you apply?
Yeah, sure. So the Ignite program is a 2-month part-time executive education course. And basically it's centered around business and entrepreneurship and really the fundamentals to take an idea or even pre-idea and go from 0 to 1. And essentially it's really just the frameworks to do it and a little bit of, experience and practice doing it. But then the core idea is to give people the experience, the frameworks they need to go home and build, successful businesses.
Do you have to have an idea before you go?
So they like people to pitch an idea to the course, but no, you don't have to have an idea to go because, you do a lot of stuff about design thinking and actually the ideation process. So you learn a lot along the way. And even those ideas that you take to the course, you often see they pivot so much.
So was there any really standout pitches that you got to see towards the end of the course?
Yeah, there was a lot of people that were really good at pitching.
Right.
And you can take a all right idea and turn it into a great pitch.
Yeah.
There were a few which I actually kind of hope go on to succeed.
Okay.
One of them was it was essentially an AI calendar assistant, which I thought was a really great thing, integrated with everyone's calendar. And so when you're trying to book a meeting, rather than going back and forth between each other, this AI bot kind of does all that scheduling.
It can find the free spots in everyone's calendar.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's super cool.
I guess execution is key though.
Mate. And that's the whole thing, right? A lot of these ideas will stay ideas.
Yeah.
And people will go back and be working on their own things because the way the course works is there's a few ideas that get progressed to the final round and then they become the group projects that get worked on throughout the course. So not everyone is the owner of that idea.
So did you work on your idea when you went there or did you get grouped with someone else's idea?
Yeah, so I pitched my idea and it got through to the final round.
Oh, nice.
And so I pitched on the first day, but then it didn't make it through to the actual group project round. So I was working on someone else's idea and it was great.
Yeah.
Built such a great team. And
I'm sure you learned a lot actually, maybe even more using someone else's idea because you can see how something else would run if it wasn't what you're planning to do.
And it was in a completely different field as well, which I think is super beneficial. It was a fintech.
Yeah.
I know nothing about fintech. And so I got to learn a lot of a different niche as well, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, that's sick.
That's so cool. That there's so many parallels. That same interview with Max Levchin was, he said the best thing that any of them had when they started.
When they did PayPal?
Yeah, PayPal with no experience in finance or no experience in fintech. So yeah, and they just built it up from the ground up. So maybe that'll be you one day.
Who knows, mate? Who knows?
So other than the hard learnings from Stanford in terms of the coursework, what was the biggest thing that you gained from it?
I think definitely network. The people that came there were from all across the world. There was some PhD students from Stanford. It was a really wide array of people. And so, now there's a few countries in the world that if I want to go to, I've got, a friend there.
Yeah.
And just, these could be potential business partners one day. We formed really strong bonds. And so building that network and even through the Stanford network as well. Like if I need help with, building a business model or something, now I can reach out to that lecturer who gave us the talk on business models and get some help from, probably the best professors in business in the world. So I think that was super beneficial, and also just like being around that Silicon Valley atmosphere, like that was worth the price of the course alone.
Yeah.
Like going there and being around people who just are frothing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that environment piece, like you're just surrounded by that energy, and it makes you, that becomes your norm sort of thing, right? Like that's so cool.
It's like you're the average of the people you hang around.
Yeah.
And so by being in an environment where everyone is like, on the cutting edge, everyone's grinding really hard, it resets your standard. And so I think that's, money can't buy that.
Was something that Kush and I have talked about a lot is kind of that. And not that people have to agree with like your idea, but having people who like are encouraging you to do it. Like even if they think, oh, that's wrong, like it's not going to work. But they're like, I don't think this is going to work because of these things. But they're like, oh, great that you're trying to do it. I think that is like a big thing.
Yeah. Actually, I had a quick question on that now. You're back in Sydney. How do you carry that on?
See, it's tough because I feel like the culture here is very different. Everyone is a lot more risk adverse. And so the startup scene here is a lot quieter and a lot more kind of underground. And so I suppose for me, it's about really digging in and finding that startup culture, finding those, handful of people here who, have that energy, have that froth.
Yeah.
And hanging around them, working on projects with them. And, that helps your like long-term motivation as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, the startup journey is not easy. And so if you hang around people who are going through the same journey, you can help each other through those hurdles.
Yeah. So you left a relatively high-paying engineering job to pursue your entrepreneurial venture. I guess what made you do that, and kind of like what's the mission? Like why walk away from that?
It was actually it's a funny story. When I was working there, loved the job, but we had an event for a guy's 40th anniversary at the company. And for me, that really hit home. Because I was so comfortable in that job, as you said, getting paid super well, live in a great place, love the people. I was so comfortable there, and I knew I would blink, and in 40 years that would be me. And so going over to the States, I kind of had that in the back of my mind, and seeing what other people over there were doing, I was like, these guys are doing it, why aren't I?
Yeah.
And it's, I'm at that prime point in my life where there's no risk to me here. I have nothing to lose. Even if I lose all my money, I can still go and live back at home with mum and dad and have a roof over my head and food. So, it's a risk not for me to take this risk.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. A risk not to take the risk. I love that. What the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe.
Absolutely, 100%.
Opportunity cost.
Yeah.
So what is Lendecon? Tell us about the vision of the startup and what it's trying to accomplish.
So sure, Lendecon is a community-based equipment rental platform. And I try and liken it to Airbnb for people. So basically it's Airbnb, but for things that you have lying around your house. So, I'm sure a lot of us have tools or camping gear or things that, we've bought for very much one-off use. And then it kind of just sits there and doesn't do much. It's very much underutilized. And so the goal of Lendecon is to create that share economy where people are incentivized to borrow things rather than buy them. And in doing so, we make a lot more sustainable society. People aren't buying the cheap, low-quality products, which will end up in landfill and create extra waste. We're incentivizing people to go and buy high-quality products and then borrow them between their community.
So it's kind of like, car sharing is pretty big in the big cities. I know Sydney, not a lot of people own a car, but they'll often get one like a GoGet or an Uber car share for weekend trips and stuff like that. But same activities or like chores and jobs.
Or even car spots or something that been you can rent out, which is pretty common. So I guess, if you have like a lawnmower, and people don't always have lawnmowers because they move from place to place. Sometimes they're in an apartment that doesn't have one and then they move somewhere else and they do need one and they don't have to buy one. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like a space saving thing as well. I can assure you, if you ask my dad if he could get rid of half the tools that I own and let me borrow them instead, he would say absolutely yes, because half our garage is full of stuff that we don't use that often.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the case in Sydney. Like the space is the absolute thing that's in very, very scarce supply. So to lose half the belongings you have but still have access to them, that's key. That's awesome.
So how do you deal with the kind of doubt and fear of failure, having left a job and pursuing your vision with this startup? And how do you deal with the concept of it maybe not working?
I feel like for me, it's as I said before, it's kind of, there's no risk for me. There's not much on the line. And so I have a lot more respect for people who leave their jobs when they have a mortgage, they have a family to support, because there is actually a lot of stuff on the line. And so, I feel like there's a lower bar for me, but also, doubt is inevitable. And I think you have to respect that it's part of the process. You will always have that level of self-doubt, and it feeds into your mental resilience, your mental toughness, which will help you in challenges to come. And so, it's still early days, but hopefully I'm building that mental toughness so that when things actually do get tough, I'll have that resilience to get through it.
Do you have anything you tell yourself about that sort of stuff? Like, I know, for example, Luke, with this podcast, I'm like, half the time we're talking about stuff, I'm like, do we have the credibility? Do we have the right to talk about it? I mean, we've created our own, podcast and brand and whatever, but like, who am I to say any of this, and who's going to listen? But you just do one and the other, and it gets more comfortable. But yeah, is there something, a strategy that you have for it at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, the imposter syndrome definitely creeps in. But it's also, I suppose, my time in the States where I got to see a lot of great people, a lot of traditionally successful people, and you humanize them.
Yeah.
And you realize that they're just regular people and they've gone and done this.
Yeah.
They had no idea what they were doing in the start. They felt exactly the same way. This is all part of the journey. And I think like stepping back in those tough moments and going, this is part of the journey, that alleviates some of your stress, because you go, okay, yeah, I'm struggling a bit now, but it'll work itself out in the end.
It is funny that imposter syndrome affects everyone, at least to some degree. Everyone goes, I don't think I'm really qualified for this, new job, or, starting whatever it is. And it's funny because the people that you probably look up to are also the ones who are doubting themselves and their capabilities. And so it's funny that it goes all the way to the top.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I feel like we're all kind of still on that journey of figuring out what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I still don't know the answer to that question. Am I founder material? I don't know.
Right.
But I will never know the answer to that question if I don't try this now.
Yeah, 100%. On the flip side of that then, like, other than the enabling thoughts that you try and give yourself and just going through it, like doing the work, how have you dealt with, or have you come up against like any naysayers or people that have tried to steer you away from this, quit the job, like go all in mentality? Has the conservancy or conservativeness of people tried to stop you?
I think like there's a few people who are looking out for the best for me, or at least they think that's what they're doing. And I think they're a valuable part of the process, right? It's all like, if you have everyone saying, yes, do this, then maybe you're actually not doing the right thing. Because like sometimes it's the best thing to do is the non-consensus decision.
Contrarian.
Yeah, exactly right. And so there's definitely been people who, like, no one's outright been like, no, this is a stupid idea, don't do this.
Yeah.
But they've tried to, like, I suppose, ask deeper questions to see if this is really what I want.
Yeah.
And not just something that, I'm being pressured to kind of do.
And then, sorry, on the business side as well, like when you've pitched the idea, I know we haven't really, dug really deep into Lendecon right now, but have you had conversations where, I'm sure you did at the course, picked holes in the idea, and then also just had a look at how big the opportunity is, sort of thing? Like, have you gone through that with others?
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely part of the course in the early days as well, just pitching my idea to as many people as I could. Because when I was here, I felt like I didn't really have the confidence to do that. But being over there, everyone's talking about their ideas.
Yeah.
And so you go to an event and the first question is always, so what are you working on?
Yeah.
And so you like really refine your like quick one-line pitch. And I think you get lots of good feedback as well, because a lot of the people there have done this multiple times.
Yeah.
And so in those conversations, you get asked questions that, you hadn't thought about before. And sometimes it sucks at the moment because you feel like stupid. You're like, I don't actually have an answer to that. But then afterwards you realize that it's actually a really valuable thing.
Yeah.
They've given you something to think about now rather than, when you're in an investor meeting or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely think it is kind of like interesting the way that our cultures are so different with that. But I guess just pivoting back to, the startup in general, Obviously, one of the first things that you do with a startup is you try and build your MVP, your minimum viable product. So, the bare bones basic thing that crosses the line to pull in a customer. How do you deal with kind of perfectionism and the way that you would like something to be, but the way that it is required to be with such, if you don't have funding or you're really early days into something?
Yeah, look, I'm still working this one out, and I wish I had a good answer for you, but I feel like at the end of the day, you have to go back to the definition of MVP, right? This is the minimum thing you can put out there.
Yeah.
And so you need to go back to your core fundamental of what the product's trying to do and really hone in on just achieving that. So like Lendecon, a great example. I want someone to be able to borrow someone else's tool. That's like the minimum that I want them to be able to do. So that could be as simple as a Google form where they just go in, click, like type in the dates that they want it and then hit enter. And then in the background, I'm doing all of the manual work in the background.
Yeah.
That's a great example of MVP. Another one, maybe just like a landing page. Just something super simple. And you also need to realize like, yeah, you could spend heaps of extra time adding features and making it what you think is better. But at the end of the day, those features that you add might not be something that the customers actually want.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about this before, which is like the difference between what someone wants and what someone will pay for. They're not necessarily the same thing. And, if you say, well, would you pay for this? You'll get an answer. And whatever that answer is, I mean, if people say absolutely, that's what you should be pursuing. That's the core product. Not, yeah, I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. And I think another thing I learned while I was over there is this idea of like fail fast. Like you hear about it a lot, but then when you go over there, you actually see people who have done it.
Yeah.
And not getting too attached to your idea. Like you could spend years building an MVP, which is perfect, and then get it out there and then realize, it's actually not that good.
Yeah.
But you wasted a whole year doing that.
Yeah.
Rather, you could spend, a few nights, a week, push something out, and then have that realization. And then quickly pivot and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, totally.
Just jumping in for a quick break. We'd love it if you did us a favor and gave us a 5-star review on your podcast player. We'd really appreciate it. It helps grow the podcast and get to more ears. Thank you.
So when you were there, when you're in Silicon Valley, you were able to go to a talk with Jensen Huang, who's the NVIDIA CEO. And for listeners who don't even know what NVIDIA is, that's totally fine. It is a $1 trillion company, and it has exploded over the last probably 24 months, mainly due to AI. I guess, what was that like? You said you wrote a blog post talking about that discussion and him as a speaker, and you were blown away. What about him as a person and CEO really, really took your breath away?
I think it was his mindset. This founding team, the founding team of NVIDIA, have been working on that company for 31 years. This isn't just a small side project. This is longer than we've been alive.
Yeah.
And so that mentality to be able to wake up every day and just get to work 31 years, day in, day out, like that is next level. And I think the way he structures his company as well, he's a very down-to-earth CEO. He is it's a flat organization, NVIDIA. I think he has 50 direct reports, which is like way more than most CEOs.
Yeah, that's huge.
And he's come from a background where he talks about it. He was cleaning dishes at Denny's. And so there is nothing that's below him. And I love that mentality of leaders who know that they're not something special. Like at the end of the day, if something needs to get done, they'll get to work and get it done as well. And so knowing that nothing's beneath him, I think is also super exceptional, considering how much the company's worth. This guy could, forget everyone and kind of wipe his hands. But, he encourages his employees to send him a list of their top 5 things that's on their mind, and he gets back to them all. He very much believes in the power of people and the fact that he is not the smartest person there. He knows that for a fact. And his whole mission is to enable others to do their life's work.
That's so cool, because then that thinking of nothing's below him, and then just appreciating that everyone has like a role that can, change or maybe not the shape of the company, but like significantly improve something, and, giving them the platform to be able to do that, which is awesome. When I was reading that, I was like, God damn, that sounds sick.
I think the other thing though as well is it makes it seem like a company that you'd want to work for.
100%.
As a computer scientist, as someone who would be interested in that, it makes me so much more interested. One, to work for a founder CEO, someone who's built from the ground up and has stayed there. because you just have tremendous respect for that. But also then someone who's like is a fantastic leader where they're like, yeah, I would 100% do your job if I have to. Like, I will do anyone's job if I have to, because whatever's required, we will achieve. I think that's something that, you go, wow, I would 100% work for that.
Yeah, it's an inspiring like feature of a leader.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things that really sticks out to me is like, the founding team's been working on this, for 31 years. And we've talked a lot about investing on the podcast and talk about, having high conviction in your picks and what you invest in and stuff like that. That is the highest conviction of it all, like putting everything all into to this thing that you've built for year on year on year. And it's not just your money, it's your time, effort, your social battery, your career, all of your skills, And if someone's got really high conviction doing that and they're leading from the front, but then also empowering others to help it along, like it's a powerful engine for sure.
So you spent months at Silicon Valley, most of which was spent at Stanford. But I guess you met all kinds of successful people. You came across some really big names. We just talked about someone who runs $1 trillion company. What was kind of like some big things that you noticed about Silicon Valley, and maybe even how it differs from Sydney, Australia?
I want to talk about the first part. I got to meet a lot of these great people, and I think I touched on it before. Like, it humanized it. Like, when I was in the front row of that Jensen talk, it really puts it into perspective. When you're that up close to someone you admire, someone who is so successful, and you see them talking, and then afterwards you see them walk past, you have that realization that at the end of the day, this is just another person.
Yeah,
and having that realization, it's so like profound, because even like after that talk, I went and introduced myself to Roloff Botha, the managing partner at Sequoia Capital, probably the biggest VC in the world. And, I was expecting for him to just straight away blow me off. But we actually had a really like wholesome conversation, and, he's a South African, so he made a bit of a joke about me being from Australia. And just for me, after like leaving that conversation, I was like, wow, these people, even though like we put such a shining light on them, at the end of the day, they're just people, and they want to build like great connections. They want to build great businesses, and it's really just like puts a new light on things. If these guys can do it, then why can't I?
Yeah.
But I think like going back to Silicon Valley as a whole, I think I tried to summarize it as Silicon Valley is the culmination of incredibly intelligent people who are fueling each other inside Stanford. And then a stone's throw away, there's access to Sand Hill Road, which is probably the largest concentration of venture capital in the world. So you have these dreams which are being brewed inside Stanford by great people, and then they can literally walk across the street and then get access to enormous amount of support and capital to grow and scale these businesses.
So it's just absolutely that environment piece. Like, it is the environment. It's like an absolute catalyst sort of environment. Everything is like thrown at the right idea at the right time. Or if it's not, you fail quick and do the next thing. But it's that risk appetite and that hunger sort of thing all in one.
100%. And I truly believe it's something that can be replicated. At the end of my time in the Valley, I was kind of reflecting, and I really do believe that we can duplicate this kind of setup across the world. It's not something geographically special about Silicon Valley. It's building the resources and the community of like-minded individuals and giving them the opportunity to prosper. That's the real secret. And you've got to understand, like, it might not look like a good investment now, but think about all of the talent that you're losing. Like, if I met a few Aussies over in the Valley, and so they've left here because they don't feel supported enough. So think about the great talent that we've lost to America, and then they'll go on to build businesses, and those great businesses should have been built here. And so all of the economic benefit we lose there. So, the jobs and all of the revenue that should be pulled here.
And the innovation, the new industry, like all that sort of stuff that Australia typically doesn't really have. If you look at the ASX 200.
Well, I would probably say a lot of countries, really. I mean, at least in my opinion, America's best asset is Silicon Valley.
100%.
It's where their biggest companies come from. It's where the largest industry that they have comes from. It is their GDP. It is their growth. And I mean, it's fascinating that you think that it's something that can be recreated anywhere. I think that's very, very interesting.
Imagine that you had a hub in every continent that's pumping out stuff like that. Surely, the whole of humanity, the economy is significantly better. There'd be way more innovation. Easier said than done, but yeah, wow, that's a bold idea. That's cool.
So Dylan, I have to ask you. You're an adult, but what do you want to be when you grow up?
It's such a tough question. I feel like because you're asking me now, I'm very much in that build mode. I want to build something that leaves a lasting impact. And, right now I'm trying to do that through Lendecon, but I definitely foresee multiple iterations. And once I feel like I've had that experience, then I really want to pivot into more of a support role where I've had this experience. I've learned all these things along the way. Now I want to help the people who were like me, the people who, always had all of these random ideas but didn't know what to do with them. And I want to help them turn those ideas into actual businesses. And so whether that's through a like mentoring or guidance role, or through venture capital or private equity or something like that, that's definitely something that like down the line I aspire to.
Just another follow-up question to that is, what advice would you give to a young person, maybe not young actually, but someone with an idea and something that they want to pursue? You've kind of gone to the heart of the world of innovation. You've spent time there. You've gone to a course by a prestigious institute, kind of pushing for that innovation. What would you say to them about whatever it is that they want to pursue?
I feel like you have to take the leap. If it's something that you really want to do it now. Don't wait. And then to make the journey easier, surround yourself with people who have that motivation, have that drive. And I feel like going to the States was that for me. Like I kind of was on the cusp of doing this already, but then seeing what other people were doing and seeing that drive, seeing that motivation, that fueled me. And so like you might be having these few little inklings, but go and surround yourself with other people. And like that kind of gives you that little trial of it anyway, and see if it's something you like. And if it is something you like, the way because you'll feel so fueled afterwards. I would wake up every day while I was over there and I'll be so excited because, you get to go and feel all of this energy of other people, and you can't pay for that.
Just super hungry, just like feeling that and be like, hell yeah, let's go in. What about like, a lot of people, I'd say, in Australia, even if we're more conservative here and don't go all in on these things, a lot of people, and I know a lot of friends that have side hustles. How would you, because you were working on your job and Lendecon and building your own business, like so on the side, how did you decide to go all in on that rather than running it as a side hustle, as a business as well as your job?
I think here people are very much focused on organic growth, and that is fine if that's what you want to do. I'll build my side hustle up until it's earning this much, and then that's enough for me to quit my job. In the States, people build businesses for it to scale within 5 years and exit with multi-$100 million, $1 billion. And so it's like that difference there. You really need to go to the core of you and decide why you're doing this. If it's just, for something that you can live on, then maybe the side hustle is fine. Maybe that's all you need. But if you want to build something truly game-changing, then you need to go all in, because those few extra months or the weeks that you'll save, they could be the make or break between you making this game-changing idea or someone else.
Yeah, that's huge. It makes a lot more sense. It sounds like just the risk appetite and it's more of a norm. Like you see it all around you. That's what people do. If you're serious about it, that's what they must do over there. But here it's more like, oh yeah, just keep it on the side and like keep plodding along with it. So that's a really powerful like understanding and something to appreciate, that if that's your mindset now, like it'll set you apart, especially in areas that it's not the norm. You know what I mean?
100%.
So I guess wrapping up here, if a listener has been kind of zoning in and out, they're hearing venture capital, they're hearing startups, they're hearing entrepreneurship, they're hearing all these words, and Lendecon, it's going all over their head, and they're like, what is this going on about? What would be the key takeaway? What would be the thing that you want them to understand?
I think the key takeaway for me is, if there is something that you want to do it now, because you've got to think, 50 years ahead. when I'm old, I don't want to look back and go, damn, that idea that I had, I wonder what would have happened if I pursued that. Like living in regret, I think is probably one of the worst things. And so when there's something that you want to do it now. And you've got to think, even if I fail, worst case, I still know the answer to that question. I will, die happy, because even if that answer to that question is it doesn't work, at least I am fulfilled that I've tried and I know the answer to that question. So if there's something you want to do it now, because it's a risk not taking the risk.
I love hearing that, because we've interviewed, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, a lot of founders that are probably 10, 15 years into their journey, and the message is the same when they look back. It's that's the message that they give their younger self or their younger brother or whatever. But this is, while you're in the thick of it, that's epic.
I also like that it's something that applies to everyone. You don't have to be trying to start a company for this to apply to you. Kush and I started this podcast. I think it applies to a lot of things, and it applies to jobs as well. Even moving away from the employment that you're in and moving to something that is more your passion. I think it applies to everyone in so many ways. So I love that. Thanks for coming on the show, Dylan. We really appreciate it.
No worries, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Mate, been so much fun. It's been huge.
We'll hopefully have you on again with a successful Lendecon, and you can tell us what it's like being a founder CEO and the other challenges you have.
Mate, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
The Dylan Pathirana version of Jensen Huang.
Exactly. Thanks for listening. Find us at thecuriositycrisis.com and Curiosity Crisis on Instagram. We're on all major streaming services, so you can listen how you like. We'd just like to ask you a quick favor. If you found any of this enjoyable, please recommend it to a friend or give us a 5-star review.
Awesome. Thanks heaps. Catch you on the next one.
Cheers, boys.
Just a quick reminder, this podcast is purely for your entertainment and education. It is not financial advice. Everything we say is just our opinions, but we hope you get something out of it and enjoy.